What's up, guys? Shirley here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new Warrior Covenant abilities. New, quote-unquote. They got redesigned, some things got changed, and we finally have a release date for the Shadowlands, which is in 2 months from recording this, October 27th. And I just wanted to give my overall thoughts and opinions upon the redesigned Covenant abilities, as well as Conduit, Soulbinds, how everything interacts with one another, and just kind of briefly at a surface level looking over each of these different choices and my opinions on them and how I kind of predict things are going to shake out, regardless of, well, not regardless, but without saying that they're obviously going to be balancing things, especially when the raid opens and then Mythic raid opens. They'll probably rebalance all this stuff again. It's kind of inevitable. But as it stands right now, let's get into what they've done. And first off, we're going to start with the Necrolords, which is probably the most substantial change because the Covenant ability itself got completely redesigned, being the Conqueror's Banner, which is this thing you can put on your back now. Two things happened with it, this as well as the redesign itself. This flag on the back, this Raise Banner spell I have here, is purely cosmetic. It doesn't do anything. I thought perhaps when I first read the patch notes that you could carry around the banner when you planted it, which would be way better than its current iteration, because as it is right now, the banner only goes within about a 15-yard radius of you, or yeah, 15 yards, and you have to be in it to get its benefits. So in a raid fight with high movement, you might miss out on some of the uptime, and especially in PvP, it's super gimped because people are going to know what this thing does and just run out of it, and you're going to lose all the benefit from the banner, so not great on that thing. If we could carry this around, that'd be great. What did they do? So it no longer gives attack speed to 4 party members. It has a 3-minute cooldown now. It still grants you 20% maximum health, 10% critical strike chance to you and only 2 party members, so it's still carrying that group buff, which I still don't like. I wish they would just remove that and maybe buff it a little bit and just give it just for the warrior so it doesn't seem like this weird utility tool to me. It's like a mini rally with crit. It's only 10%. I don't know what they're thinking here. But it lasts 20 seconds, and then during these 20 seconds, spending 20 rage for arms, or I believe it's 30 for fury, will grant you a stack of this buff called Glory, which increases your critical strike damage by 1% per stack up to 30% for 30 seconds. So technically, when you plant this thing, you get 50 seconds of uptime on this crit strike damage buff. However, you have to ramp up the buff during the first 20 seconds while the banner's actually down, so you're not getting the big crit benefit until after the banner is gone. And currently on the beta, because of the way stats are, I mean, maybe if we had like a full set of, Mythic raid gear, this would be different, but currently, arms anyway, you just don't have enough haste or crit to actually get a full 30 stack on this banner, even with using one of the conduits. You can get like 19 or 20, give or take a little bit. I mean, I guess if you had Bloodlust, you could get a little bit higher than that. But it's not a lot. And the 10% critical strike chance doesn't really, you don't really feel much going on with that. And the actual crit strike damage you get after the fact, you once again don't really feel, because it's very, very RNG. I mean, you could see the stat line. We're sitting at 11 and 7 right now. It's not great. So the redesign still feels just frankly bad to use currently, especially on a 3-minute cooldown, considerably longer than any of the other covenants, and it doesn't really feel like it does much. That all being said, I will suspect that this thing is going to scale pretty well. By the end of the expansion, when we're sitting at like 30% crit and haste, this is going to be pretty good because you'll be able to ramp up that crit damage bonus within the 20-second window and still benefit off of the 10% increase to critical strike chance during that as well. And it'll probably pair a little bit better with Fury because Recklessness also gives you 20% crit chance, so you can just stack these things. Less so for arms, it seems, even though it costs less rage to stack it up. But yeah, initial impressions on it, I'm still not too happy. I wish they would remove the group benefits as well as let us carry it around, frankly. I don't like being tied to that one spot. And going with Fleshcraft, which isn't that great of a utility covenant ability, it still just seems a bit weak. And last but not least, looking at the conduits and the Soulbinds. So this is the special Necrolord conduit right here. When you put it down, it'll instantly grant you 5 stacks of glory, and it gives you 12% increased strength. Now, the 12% increased strength is great, and the glory benefit is kind of a necessity right now since you have a hard time actually stacking it up because of low haste values. So this is good if that strength bonus actually scales crazily. If these conduits actually have a different value based on item level, so like if the mythic version gives you 16% strength or 20% increased strength later on in the expansion, this could get really good. Once again, coming back to I think that the banner itself could scale really well. However, the actual Soulbinds for Necrolords, there is no actual really standout talent thing here, if you want to call it that. None of these things really jump out at me as, really good as far as throughput increases. There are some nice utility things, like Ultimate Form here, making you immune to CC. Great for PvP, obviously, but it doesn't really help you much in the raid, and Fleshcraft itself is still really awkward to use. So time will tell if this thing actually scales really well, and, we get to see if that strength and the crit and everything ends up working out. But last but not least, this is what it looks like. This is the area you have to work in, and as soon as you run out of it, you can see the buffs up here. I'm losing out on the Conqueror's Frenzy, dropping out. You still get the glory, but you lose out on the ability to spend rage and actually ramp this thing up. So yeah, it still looks cool. I'll give them that. But anyway, moving on to the next thing. The spear, the Kyrian spear, the damage on it basically got cut in half. I think it was like 45% or something on the direct damage, as well as the damage over time. So the Spear Bastion still has a minute cooldown, but does considerably less damage, and it now has a pseudo 5-target cap. So it'll do full damage to 5 targets, but it will do diminishing damage on anything larger than that, so we can't get some really big, like, cheesy situations. Some of the dungeons that we've done on the beta, you could stack it with Warbreaker, which is, all enemies, and then throw down this giant spear and do some really big AoE. In a world where there's a lot of target caps, felt really nice. Pair that with Bladestorm, it's your bread and butter. But now that it's been capped out, it's been reined in, not to mention the damage itself getting cut so hard, makes it a lot less of an attractive option. Like, it does arcane damage, of course, so it's probably hitting a little bit harder than Warbreaker, but, even tooltip-wise, it's less upfront damage. Obviously, the dot is going to make it for more. It's still good, and I would say it's less of a no-brainer now versus this and the Shockwave from the Night Fae. Now, I think, after these changes, the Shockwave from Night Fae actually has a place, whereas before the Spear was kind of just better in every way. That being said, even with the changes of it getting nerfed, as arms anyway, if you're spec'd into Anger Management and Warbreaker, the way Anger Management works, you'll basically have up every minute you have Bladestorm up from spending Rage, you'll have Spear up. So you'll have all 3 of these things up every minute, and, Warbreaker will be up twice as often in between that. But you'll have this nice window where you can Warbreaker, chuck down the Spear, and this Bladestorm on top of it. Really good burst. Still there, so I think it's definitely still going to have a place. And also, the Soulbinds and Conduits for the Spear are way better than the Necrolord for a lot of reasons. But, like this right here, even the first guy you get, you're getting this versatility buff that's basically permanent, especially for arms anyway. If you're using Fervor for battle, or Fervor of battle, then you're getting this nice versatility benefit all the time. And then on top of that, the last one, Spear Bastion, gives you 5% mastery for 20 seconds, and then it ejects these little spheres that you saw on the ground that you can pick up to extend this duration. So you're getting, like, a 10% damage increase every time you use this on top of the Spear, and since it lines up so well with your cooldowns, and it's such a short cooldown, I think the Spear is still going to have a pretty good spot. And, like I said, these not the... what's the word for it? Not the conduits, but the Soulbind. Too many new systems. Actually useful. Good throughput. Decent options in here. There's a few things between these. It's not just the one that actually seem decent. But on the conduit itself, this is the specific one for Kyrian Spear, which just increases the damage by 20% and the rage generation, so it's going to be generating 30 rage on top of that. Really nice, especially if you're wanting to pair this with Ravager. You could get a big chunk of rage from Ravager and the Spear and just go to town with Whirlwind spamming. So I think it needed reined in. It did too much damage beforehand, but it's still a viable choice, even though it's been kind of cut in half. Anyway, moving on. That kind of opens up the shockwave from Night Fae. I can't even remember what it's called, like Ancient Aftershock. It also has seen a redesign, and I just realized that I can't actually look at it on this character because it's still broken. Alright, excuse me. We gotta get on a fresh character because you can't currently finish the Night Fae quest on the beta. But you can actually still test it, and we can still look at the conduits and everything. So we go over here and talk to the butterfly.
You could probably use a little help, huh?
And okay, I've already got it here. Here is the new Ancient Aftershock. Still a minute and a half cooldown. Its damage up front has not been cut, so if you're comparing it to like the Spear before, it's considerably more. 2,500 nature damage, so it's still ignoring armor. Still knocks everything down for 1.5 seconds. Still target capped at 5 enemies. However, the redesign, it no longer puts a dot on everything that you hit and siphons rage off of them. It now just puts a cone on the ground, and it basically acts just like Elemental Shaman's Earthquake. It does pulsing damage for 12 seconds. Every 3 seconds in this area on the ground, a cone, and then it generates rage per enemy hit, and targets in this cone that get hit by it are micro-stun for 0.5 seconds. So whether or not this is better than it was before, it's kind of debatable. In a dungeon, I think this is going to be kind of great, because it's just going to micro-stun everything. PvP, it's hard to say. You're not getting the guaranteed rage generation, but if you can lock somebody down in this and get them really slowed, say with Piercing Howl, since it's such a big slow, it's going to continue to micro-stun them if they're in it, which could be, you know, really good, very disruptive. Still a pretty long cooldown, but not too bad. And I like it more so now because the Spear, since the damage on it got nerfed, the upfront burst of Ancient Aftershock can actually be pretty damn good. So you can put up deep wounds, you know, which is going to give you your mastery benefits damage, and then you can Warbreaker, you can pair Avatar with it, and all these things actually affect it, because it's not like an essence in BFA, it's a warrior ability, so all that's going to buff it, and the shock itself can hit really hard, especially if it crits, and that's what it looks like now. Pretty cool ground effect. You can see it still pulling rage off the targets, and these things are immune to the stun, of course, but it would be knocking them down for a quarter second, or half a second, and that doesn't share diminishing return with any other stuns as well. It's pretty good to point out. So yeah, I think it's a more attractive option now if you like the Night Fae Shockwave, especially for tanks for dungeons, if you're into Mythic Plus. And on that note, looking at the conduits and the Soulbinds, once again, I think there actually is something here that's worth looking at. This one especially, like the very first one you get, when you use Ancient Aftershock, or rather, when you're just doing damage, you get this buff that stacks up to 10, and then when you actually cast Ancient Aftershock, it will give you this buff for 30 seconds per stack, blah, 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 for 30 seconds. It's 20%, what I'm getting at here is it's 20% mastery for 30 seconds after you use it. And for Arms Warrior, at least, that's just 20% more damage on your target for that 30-second window. And since it only has a minute and a half cooldown, which is also augmented by its conduit that's unique, which lowers it by 16 seconds, not huge, but you're getting pretty good uptime out of this thing, since every time the Ancient Aftershock is going to be up, you're going to have 10 stacks of this. So you're just getting this 20% burst window after Ancient Aftershock, and it already hits really hard. So this is going to have some pretty good synergy in every situation, frankly, and I like the burst, especially for PvP. As far as other things, there were a couple of little minor things in here, like this one that gives you versatility, like all the time as long as you're around allies. Still useful. There's like a little cheat death thing that's useful. Once again, going back to like the Necrolord one, it's just there's no real place for it. And moving on to the last one that hasn't seen any changes, which would be Revendreth and Condemn. And this one, I've, kind of showcased it the most part on all my videos so far. Hasn't changed any, still really good, and it gets exceptional synergy with a legendary. So the legendary is coming up. Obviously, we're going to choose the first one that we want, especially like the week that the raid is opening. And this one right here, which is just Executioner's Precision, instant synergy with Condemn all the time. It's just guaranteed damage, so I suspect this is going to be pretty good. Surprisingly, a couple of the other legendaries are also pretty good from what I've tested on here. But on top of Condemn just being reliable, consistent damage pretty much all the time, its Soulbinds are actually pretty dang useful as well, too. Even the utility ones like this, there's like a nice choice here. Since they changed these things, we now have 3 potency conduits available in each one. Or you can guaranteed get it in each of these trees now if you want. Yeah, there's 3 potency in all of them. Granted, you have to go a slightly different path to get it, so you can't get like a throughput one. But this is like one of the interesting decisions, is that we can take this duration reduction on CC and get another potency conduit, or you could take a defensive one and get this duelist talent, which just does 4% more damage the first thing you hit, which is really good. It's just going to be a math thing if it ends up being worth it over an actual conduit itself, but at least it's there, like there's something useful there. And then the final thing is this 10 seconds of 20% haste, and like I've said, Arms is really slow right now, so this is really good when this thing procs, and you can kind of plan around it because you can see it coming when these buffs are stacking up. So Revendreth has got a good, gotta keep forgetting the word, Soulbind, and it's also got a couple of them. Like this one has 10% versatility on it for 10 seconds every minute. You can plan around this. Exceptionally good on the pull of a fight. You're just doing 10% more damage, and it buffs your allies, even though I don't really care about that little tidbit. But there are multiple options here. So, oh, and there goes the beta again. I'm just going to leave it here. In conclusion, on the Covenants as it sits right now, outside of any drastic tuning changes, I think Condemn is probably still going to be our safest bet. It's just going to be consistent. I think Ancient Aftershock is going to be really good in Mythic Plus and any heavy, AoE situation, as well as maybe some burst PvP. It depends on how the meta shakes up, if the game is super dampening, or if we can actually set up big burst windows. Then I could see Ancient Aftershock being really good. And then Spear is going to be Mythic Plus, really good again, super consistent damage, nice AoE cleave. I don't think it's going to be necessarily the best for single target. I think Condemn is going to egg it out at the moment anyway. And last but not least, the banner. I think currently on launch, if we don't get some really nice scaling with gear, I don't see it being that useful. It just doesn't seem that impactful. It's got too long of a cooldown. All the Soulbinds don't really seem that good for just raw throughput. I will say that it's going to scale really well, so time will tell, if it'll be worth it in the long run. But anyway, that's my thoughts so far on the Covenants going to Shadowlands. I'll see you all soon. Not in 2 months, obviously. But thanks for watching. Peace.